Hi students, welcome back to my channel Karthik NEET Biology. In the last session, I have discussed up to vertebral column in axial skeleton. Now starts from ribs and sternum in axial skeleton. Sternum. Sternum. Sternum is a flat bone located on mid-ventral line of thorax. Mid-ventral line of thorax. The sternum is also called as breastbone. Breastbone. Sternum is also called as breastbone. It is a flat bone located on midventral line of thorax. Sternum consists of three parts. The first part is manubrium. It is anterior part. The second part is body. It is present in the middle of sternum. The last posterior part is xiphoid process. These are three parts present in sternum. Again, I will tell. Sternum consists of three parts. They are manubrium, it is anterior part. Body, it is middle part. And xiphoid process, it is posterior part. Sternum is useful for attachment of ribs ventrally, and also attachment of abdominal muscles. These are the functions of sternum. Sternum is useful for attachment of ribs and abdominal muscles. This is about sternum. Next, ribs. We have 12 pairs of ribs. These ribs are flat bones. These are attached ventrally. To the sternum. And dorsally to vertebral column. Ribs are 12 pairs. These are flat bones. These ribs are attached ventrally to the sternum and dorsal to the vertebral column. Why ribs we can call as bicephalic? Why we can call ribs as bicephalic? Because on the dorsal side of ribs, on the dorsally, ribs have two articulations for the attachment to vertebral column. Why ribs called bicephalic? Because these ribs are attached to the vertebral column by two articulations. Hence, ribs are bicephalic. In 12 pairs, first seven pairs of ribs are true ribs. Why we can call true ribs? These first 7 pairs of ribs attached dorsally to the vertebral column and ventrally to sternum directly. These first 7 pairs of ribs are directly attached to the sternum ventrally. Hence, these first 7 pairs of ribs are true ribs. Why we can call the first 7 pairs of ribs are true ribs? Because these first 7 pairs of ribs are directly attached to the sternum ventrally. Hence, these first 7 pairs of ribs are true ribs. After 7th pair, 8th, 9th and 10th pairs of ribs are false ribs. False ribs because these are also attached dorsally to vertebral column, but ventrally not to sternum directly. These 8th, 9th and 10th pairs of ribs are false ribs because these are not attached directly to the sternum ventrally but attached to the seventh pair seventh pair seventh pairs of seventh pair of ribs by hyaline cartilage. Are you understand, students? Why we can call 8th, 9th and 10th pairs of ribs are false ribs? Because these 3 pairs of ribs are not directly attached to the sternum. These 8th, 9th and 10th pairs of ribs are not directly attached ventrate not to the sternum directly. Hence, these 3 pairs, that is 8th, 9th and 10th pairs of ribs are false ribs. These 3 ribs are also called as vertebro because attached to the vertebral column, chondral because attached to the cartilage not to the sternum directly. Vertebrochondral ribs. What we can call these 3 pairs of ribs? Vertebrochondral ribs. What are vertebrochondral ribs? 8th, 9th and 10th pairs of ribs are vertebrochondral ribs. First 7 pair of ribs are also called as vertebrosternal ribs because dorsal attached to the vertebral column and ventrally to the sternum directly. Hence, we can call vertebrosternal. These 3 pairs of ribs attached dorsally to the vertebral column, hence vertebrochondral because not attached to the sternum, but attached to the sternum by 7th pair of rib by hyaline cartilage. Hence, we can call vertebrochondral ribs. What are vertebrochondral ribs? 8th, 9th and 10th pairs of ribs are called vertebrochondral ribs. The last 11th and 12th pair, 11th and 12th pair of ribs are dorsally attached to vertebral column, but ventrally they are not attached to the sternum. These 11th and 12th pairs ribs are floating freely on ventral side, floating freely on ventral side. Hence, these 2 pairs of ribs are floating ribs. Floating ribs. Again, I will tell about ribs. There are 12 pairs of ribs. These ribs are flat bones ventrally to the sternum. These ribs are attached ventrally to the sternum and dorsal to the vertebral column. Why we can call ribs are bicephalic? Because on the dorsal side of ribs have two articulations. Hence ribs are bicephalic. Ribs are 12 pairs. First 7 pairs of ribs are true ribs. Why we can call first 7 pairs of ribs are true ribs? Because they are dorsal attached to the vertebral column and ventrally to the sternum directly. Ventrally to the sternum directly attached. Hence the first 7 pairs of ribs are true ribs. These first 7 pair of ribs are true ribs and also called as vertebrosternal ribs. 8th, ninth, and 10th pair of ribs are false ribs. What are false ribs? 8th, ninth, and 10th pair of ribs are false ribs. These are also attached dorsal to the vertebral column, but ventrally not attached to the sternum directly. These 8th, ninth, and 10th pair of ribs are not attached directly to the sternum. Ventrally not to sternum directly. These 8th, ninth, and 10th pair of ribs are not attached ventrally not to the sternum directly. Hence these ribs are false ribs. These 7th pair of ribs are attached ventrally to the 7th pair of rib by hyaline cartilage. These 8th, ninth, 10th pair of ribs attached to the 7th pair of ribs by hyaline cartilage to the sternum. Hence these 8th, ninth, 10th pair of ribs are also called as vertebrochondral ribs. Vertebro means vertebral column, chondra means cartilage, that is hyaline cartilage. Next, last pair, that is 11th and 12th pairs of ribs are dorsally attached to the vertebral column, but ventrally they are not attached to the sternum. Hence these 11th and 12th pairs of ribs are called floating ribs, because these 11th and 12th pair of ribs floating freely on the ventral side. This is about axial skeleton. I will tell appendal skeleton on next class. Thank you.